Hi folks, Dave with DBS Tech Talk, and today we're going to talk about DACs and amps and do they make a difference? DACs, digital to analog converters. Does it make a difference? Can they make a difference? Should you get one? Why should you get one? And amps, do they make a difference? Should I get a solid state amp or should I get a tube amp? Well, it all comes down to preference mainly. First of all, if you have low impedance, easy to drive headphones, and they sound good out of your computer or out of your phone, you might not need one. Do you want to make it sound a little better, change the tonality of it? Yeah, you might want to try one. If you have higher quality headphones or in-ears, DACs and amps become more important, and you should probably invest in one. And that's the reason why I invested in one, because when I got the M1060, I noticed my phone just didn't drive them to their full potential, or at least what I thought was their full potential, and I wanted to give a desktop amp a try. And so I went on, did some research, couldn't figure out what I was looking for on Amazon, so I went to MassDrop, read a bunch of reviews, saw the topping stack, and was like, sure, I'll get it. I had really no idea what I was looking for, and to this day, I'm honestly not the greatest at explaining what DACs and amps are, but I'm going to give you the reasons as to why I bought this. So, got the DAC, nice quality, all metal, has nice little rubber feet on the bottom, and has a power switch and a selector for USB, coax, and optical on the front. On the back, you have your RCA in, you have your coaxial in, you have your optical in, you have your USB in, and a power supply. And it looks nice and sharp, and has blue LEDs and red LED in front that cat just fell off his cat tree. Will show that the power is on, and then also whether or not you have a source that is connected or not connected. The amp, same build, nice metal build, very solid. Has power switches on the front. Has a low and high power switch, and then it has the gain switches that go up by 9 dB. So you have no gain or standard, and then you have 9 dB plus and 18 dB plus. You have a 3.5 millimeter and a 6.35 millimeter jack, and then the volume knob. And when the power is on, the volume knob has a little LED light that goes all the way around it and kind of makes it glow, makes it really cool. It looks nice at night. On the back, you have RCA in and RCA out, and a switch to change it from dual to auto, and a power supply. I have not tested this with speakers at all, so I do not know how it works as a preamp. I do know also that they have another amp that is a speaker amp that people love also. So anyways, this is the D30 and A30, and when I got it and I hooked it up, I've always used USB or optical. I use optical coming out of my PlayStation 4 Pro into it, and then I have my computer or my cell phones connect into the USB, and I will use either a USB-C to USB 3.0 female, and then connect it into it with the adapter that came with the DAC, or going optical. And also the DAC is DSD capable. I do not have any files that are DSD, but if you do, this DAC is capable of running them. Sorry, I don't know all the technical specs on it. I'm not really into tech specs, but I do know that some of them are important, and I do know that this is considered a high impedance amp, so it doesn't play real well with some like in-ear monitors that are low impedance or headphones that are low impedance. I noticed that on some of my in-ears, if I plug it in, they sound really bright and sharp, and just they don't sound good, and you barely turn the volume knob and you're maxing yourself out. Whereas if I take like my RHA CL750s, which are a lot higher impedance, 80 ohm impedance headphones, in-ears, and it runs these just fine, and they sound just great on this. In fact, that's one of the best matchups for that when it comes to in-ears. Headphone wise, it pushes everything, including the hard to drive advanced alphas, and the advanced alpha 11 o'clock is too loud on high gain for these. So this has plenty of power, the amp does. The DAC is a very clean, very clear amp, very analytical, or DAC. Some people may call it dry or boring. I don't think so. I think it has very good sound to it. It has really nice sound stage, very good imaging and detail on it, and you can really hear the separation between bass, mids, and treble, and it's very well extended out. But it is a very clean and clear amp. DAC does not add any colorization to the sound whatsoever. So you will hear the recording as it is supposed to be. And if you have a bad recording, you will hear the little details in it. So I had that for the longest time. I was using it with the M1060, A560, and all the other headphones I had, Bear Dynamic Custom Studios, and I loved it. I thought it sounded really good. And I wanted to get tube amp, so I started searching, and I got a Little Bear P7. Thing came broken, had to return it, got another one from Amazon. It looked cool, had a nice, unique funnel shaped, I can't remember the name of the tube, but it had really unique look to it. I thought it looked cool on the desk and sounded good. All of that. 2 weeks into it, it broke. Wouldn't even power on. It wasn't the tubes. It was something to do with the power supply inside. So I returned it to Amazon, and I started doing some research. Went back to Massdrop since I had had such a good experience getting the topping stack. I figured maybe they have tube amps, and they do. They had the dark voice and little dots and all that. I didn't want to pay quite the price of the dark voice. So research said the Little Dot Mark II was a baby dark voice, and so I thought, hey, I'll give it a shot. Everybody loves the dark voice, so let's see what happens. I went to get it on the drop of the Little Dot, and it ended before I was fully committed. So I went and did some research, found it on Amazon, got the Little Dot for basically the same price as it was going to be on Massdrop. It came, I hooked it up, and at first it just didn't. It sounded muffled. It sounded way too warm. Definitely tubey sound, but it was a little too much for me. And so, tubey sound. And so I ordered some different tubes for it that were recommended, and they took forever. It came on a slow boat from somewhere. And they were the Russian tubes. Put them in, and they opened it up a lot better. Still had that warmness to it and that thickness that tubes will add, and a little bit of distortion in it, and kind of tames down the treble and warms up the mids. But it didn't play well with my M1060. They didn't agree with it at all, and they sounded terrible with it. The 560, it warmed them up to the point where they were just so muddy you could barely really hear anything. And the only things that it would play with were my dynamics. And so I had custom studios, but I didn't really care for them on tube, because I like those to be clear and analytical, and so I prefer to use them on my topping stack. So I tried a couple of different headphones, which I returned. I tried some APPJ K612s, and some other various ones, and I didn't really I was really getting disappointed, and so I got the Hyphaman HE350s, and I liked them on the little dot. And then a friend wanted to borrow my little dot to try it with his HD 700s, and so I loaned that out to him. And in the meantime, I wanted to try another tube amp that worked better with planars. And some people recommended that I check out the APPJ PA1502A. And again, this went on Mass Drop, and I put the money out since I had loaned out my little dot. And it came, and it is a lot smaller than the little dot. The little dot is about twice the size of this, about the same weight, and as you can see, this one fits right in the palm of my hand, just overlays the palm of my hand just a little bit, and it's very solidly built. I think it looks really nice, very sharp looking, has a little black around the tubes, and yeah, just a nicely built little amp. Has a 6.35 in the front, has a high-low gain switch in the front. Thank you very much. Don't have to change out the jumpers like you do on the little dot. And it has a volume knob that is very smooth, nicely finished. It has a little marker so you actually know kind of what time frame you're looking at on the clock, on the pot. On the back you have RCA ins and power switch in the back, which is kind of a bummer. I wish it was on the front. And then it has your electrical cord input. And it's a very unique amp. It's unlike the little dot, it actually plays real well with planars. And from what I understand, there's couple different types of tube amps. There's TCL and OCL. This is an OCL, and that seems to not drive the planar to the mad, like too much current going through it and making it sound, I don't know, it was just weird. The little dot just didn't work. But this one it does. I did change out the stock tubes. The stock tubes that come, they're okay, but it's a little bit on the thumpy side and not clear. So I changed them out, and I put electro harmonics in, all three of them, and the electro harmonic tubes just open up the sound stage and make it just sound so much better. Kind of clears up the bass and the mids and the treble, and it just emits a warm, nice sound with a good headroom and sound stage and a well extended bass and treble. And yet it still adds that tube warmth to it, and it's I just love it. Well, I wanted to try different DACs. I was like, okay, we've got the topping DAC, got two different amps. Would a different DAC make it sound different? And so I went and did a little research, and I put myself on a budget of $100 or less, and I found several different ones, but a lot of good reviews on the forums was for Music Hall, and it's the DAC 15.2. And I didn't really know much about it. I did notice that it had a different chip than the topping, and so when I paid it, came through Amazon, very nicely built. It's taller than the topping, but the topping is just a little bit taller. And the topping also is wider. So it's lighter than the topping is. The topping's got a little more heft to it, but it's still all metal, nice and black. I like black better actually on my desk. On the front you have your on-off switch with a blue LED, and then you have a switch for coax, optical, and USB, and it also has a unlocked lock LED which turns blue when connected. You have RCA in, or sorry, RCA out, optical, USB, and coax in, and a power supply. And I actually like this DAC better. It has a little more sound, fun sound to it than the topping. The topping's really clear, analytical, and clean. This one has a little bit of a warmth to it. It's not like a tube amp, but it just adds a little bit of a lushness to the sound, I guess would be a word to say. It has about the same extension as the topping, maybe just slightly a little less on the soundstage and headroom. But the details and the clarity and all that are still there. It just to me it's just a more fun DAC to hear. It's not a significant difference, but it's enough to take away the brightness that the topping can have. The topping can be so analytical that every now and then on certain headphones like the Advanced Alpha or the M1060 or the Dynamic Custom Studios, it can get a little bright in the treble, and this doesn't really have that issue. And so it works well with both amps. I actually prefer it with a tube amp, but it does work well with the topping D30 or A30 also. The A30 pushes it a little bit better, gives it a little more, the sound a little bit more of a dynamic, probably because it's more powerful. But you still get that slightly warmer sound than you do. I also got another amp. I wanted one that's not portable, so to say, but desktop, but not as powerful, and one that will play well with the lesser impedance headphones and IEMs that I have. Also, one that I can take on a trip that would not take up a whole lot of space, but would be better than a battery powered FIO Q1 that I use. And so I went again, did a little bit of research. Musical Fidelity VCAN 2 is the one that I chose, and comes, and I mean, this thing is light. I think my Q1 is actually heavier than this. It's just slightly taller than the Music Hall, and it's about the same thickness, and about just a little bit not as wide. 3.5 and a 6.35 in the front, along with a volume knob that is plastic and has a little white dot on it so that you know where you're positioning it. On the back you have line in, line out, and a power supply in. Does have a proprietary power. You can change out the power on them though. From what I've understood, I haven't done that yet, but apparently you can push a little more power to it. Might have to look into that. But it's very easy to use. Power supply is always on. There's no power switch, and I mean, literally very light. So you could put this in a bag along with a power supply, which is just real small, and off you go. I wonder if this thing would run off a battery pack. If you had the proper connector, it probably would. Anyways, how it sounds, it's a clean amp. It's not overly colored. It's not as clean as the A30, but it's not a tube amp sound, but it adds a little bit of a warmth to it, but it's not overly powerful. So about the only headphones that it'll drive the M1060 and the Dynamic Custom Studios well, but it will not drive the Advanced Alpha. The Advanced Alpha sounds dull and boring on it, and that you have to max it pretty much out, and then it starts distorting before you even get to a volume where you can really hear it. But the other headphones work great. Anything I would say 80 ohms or less on impedance, and with sensitivity of at least 100 dB or higher, will probably work on this amp just well. And it's good quality. I mean, it works as a desktop amp. You just can't use anything that's super demanding when it comes to headphones. Overall, did I hear a difference? Absolutely. You can hear a difference. It's not something that's like, oh, wow, you know, this is like night and day. It's like I'm totally in different worlds. No, it's not like that. But it is each one of the ones that I have do something a little differently and add a little bit to the sound. They're not changing the sound completely where you're like where the songs are completely different, but it does add a little bit more of a tone for. So the topping, very clean, very clear, very analytical. You're going to hear it as it's recorded. If it was recorded badly, you're going to know it. The music hall adds a little bit of warmth to it and makes it a little more full bodied, a little more fun sounding. And then on amps, the A30, mega powerful, gonna power anything under the sun that you need, and you're going to get a clean sound and a detailed sound. The tube amp is going to do what it needs to. It's going to sound like a tube. It's going to be a little more warm. It's going to be a little more distortions in it, but it's going to make a difference in sound. And then the V-Can, slightly warmer sound than the A30, but not like a tube amp. Not as powerful, obviously. It has very good extension and very good sound to it. Makes a nice extra large portable amp if you have a source. Like if you were sitting at a desk at the office, this would be excellent if you're using low powered headphones. Doesn't take up a whole lot of space. People wouldn't really know what it was. So there you go, folks. Those are my thoughts and ideas on the tube amps and solid state amps and the DACs that I have. Forgot to tell you, which one do I prefer? Well, I actually, depends on what by the reason I'm using it. If I'm doing gaming and I'm listening to headphones for the first time and I want to hear all the details and hear what they sound like, topping stack. If I'm just sitting, chilling, relaxing, drinking my coffee, kicking back, getting ready for a hard night of work, or relaxing on a Sunday afternoon with the sun shining down, or how, whatever I'm doing, music hall, DAC. And then the amps, I actually prefer the music hall with the tube amp. To me, it just sounds really nice and pleasant on the Advanced Alpha. But the topping A30 goes well with the music hall also. It's not, it takes just enough of the brightness away that the topping adds in, the analytical, clear details. So there you go. Preference, music hall with a tube amp. But if I'm testing and trying something for the first time or gaming, topping stack. And I do not like the topping D30 DAC with the tube amps. There's just something about that mixture I just don't like. It just doesn't do it for me. It just sounds weird. So, anyways, those are my thoughts. Curious to see what you guys have tried out, what amps and DACs you use, and I hope to hear from you down in the comments. Thank you for watching. This has been Dave with DBS Tech Talk, and I'll catch you on the next video.